Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy this content, please consider commenting what you liked, and what could be improved upon. Now, on to our story. I found out that my wife's boss was messaging her about figures and spreadsheets. My response was swift and brutal. The coffee shop. I pushed open the door to the little cafe, the bell jingling overhead. The smell of roasted beans and steamed milk wrapped around me, familiar and comforting. I was running between job sites today, another long day of managing crews and checking progress, but I needed caffeine to keep me going. As I stepped toward the counter, something caught my eye. A familiar laugh. My wife, Sarah, sat at a small table near the window, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Across from her was a man in a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled up. Mark, I remembered. She'd mentioned him a few times, some marketing project they were collaborating on. She noticed me then, her face brightening. "Hey, babe," she called, waving me over. "Come join us when you're done ordering." I nodded, giving a quick smile before turning to the barista. My usual, black coffee, no frills. As I waited, I glanced back at their table. Papers were spread out between them, a laptop open, notes scribbled in Sarah's familiar handwriting. Nothing unusual. Just work. When my coffee was ready, I walked over. Sarah introduced me properly. Mark shook my hand with a firm grip, polite, professional. We made small talk for a minute, how work was going, the weather, the usual. Sarah was relaxed, smiling, her fingers tapping idly on her notebook. Nothing about her seemed off. "Well, I've got to get to the next site," I said after a sip of my coffee. "Drive safe," Sarah said, reaching out to squeeze my arm. "Yeah, have a good one," Mark added. Something about his tone was just a little too light. Like there was an extra beat in his words, like he was holding back a smirk. Or maybe I was imagining it. I waved and headed out, tossing my cup in the trash as I stepped into the sunlight. The engine of my truck rumbled to life, and I pulled onto the road, pushing the thought away. Just work. Just coffee. Nothing to overthink. But as the miles rolled by, that tiny flicker of doubt stayed with me, the way Mark's voice had curled at the edges when he said goodbye. Like he knew something I didn't. I shook my head, turning up the radio. Probably nothing. Probably. Later that night. The house was quiet when Sarah got home, the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling were the only sounds. I was on the couch, half watching a baseball game, when the front door opened. She kicked off her heels with a sigh, dropping her bag by the entryway. "Long day?" I asked, glancing up. She gave a tired smile. "You have no idea." That's when I noticed it, a dark stain splashed across the front of her blouse, just below the collar. Coffee, by the look of it. But the placement was odd. If she'd spilled her own drink, it would have been lower, near her lap. This was higher, like someone had tipped a cup toward her. She caught me looking and frowned, touching the spot absently. "Ugh. Yeah. That. What happened?" She sighed again, rolling her eyes as she unbuttoned the blouse. "Mark. He knocked over his cup like an idiot when he was reaching for his phone. Got me right in the chest." She balled up the fabric and tossed it toward the laundry room. "I swear, if he wasn't the one signing off on this project." I stood, following her toward the bedroom. "Is it salvageable?" She froze for half a second, then turned, and something flashed in her eyes, not anger at me, but frustration, tightly coiled. "I didn't even dare complain," she said, her voice low. "You know how much I need this promotion, Jake. If I piss him off now, after a year of grinding for this? Forget it." I nodded slowly. "Yeah. I get it." She exhaled, shaking her head as she pulled on an old t-shirt. "It's fine. Just one more week of this, and then the presentation is done." I wanted to ask more, why the stain was there, why Mark's voice had sounded so strange earlier, but the tightness in her jaw told me to let it go. So I just kissed her temple and said, "You'll kill it. You always do." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. And as she walked away, I stared at the discarded blouse on the floor, the stain still damp. One more week. I told myself that was all it was. But the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. The slow burn. The next week was a slow unraveling. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly, emails, messages, notifications. Most were work, but whenever Mark's name flashed across the screen, her jaw tightened. She never hid her phone, never acted guilty, just irritated. Exhausted. Like every ping was another weight strapped to her back. I'd ask, "Everything okay?" "Just work," she'd mutter, thumbing out a clipped reply before tossing her phone aside. But it wasn't just work. Not really. She came home later each night, her shoulders stiff, her smiles brittle. I'd try to rub the tension from her neck, make her laugh, but she'd just sigh and say, "I'm fine." She wasn't. Then, last night, another message lit up her screen as she was getting ready for bed. "Mark, need you to double-check these figures before tomorrow. Spreadsheets updated, let me know if anything's off." She stared at it for a long moment, her fingers trembling slightly before she set the phone down hard on the bed. Without a word, she walked into the bathroom and shut the door. At first, silence. Then, soft, choked sobs. She was trying to muffle them, but I knew. I knew. My hands curled into fists. I looked at her phone, still glowing on the bed. That was it. I picked it up. No password, she'd never felt the need to lock it from me. The messages with Mark were right there, a long chain of spreadsheets, project notes, dry corporate talk. But then. "Mark, 3 days ago you know I wouldn't push you like this if I didn't think you could handle it." "Sarah, I know. It's just a lot." "Mark, you'll be fine. You always are," winky face. "Harmless. Almost." Then, yesterday. "Mark, you're overthinking this. Just trust me." "Sarah, I do. It's not that." "Mark, then what?" She never answered. And tonight, the message about the spreadsheet. Nothing outright. No smoking gun. But the tone was all wrong. The way he spoke to her wasn't just professional. It was familiar. Condescending. Like he knew exactly how much power he had. And Sarah, strong, unshakable Sarah, was crying in the bathroom because of him. I set the phone down, my pulse roaring in my ears. I didn't know what game this guy was playing. But I was going to end it. The breaking point. I waited. The sound of Sarah's muffled crying clawed at me, but I didn't knock. Didn't push. She needed this, needed to let it out. So I sat on the edge of the bed, hands clenched, listening to every hitched breath on the other side of the door. Finally, the handle turned. Her face was flushed, eyes swollen, but she held herself stiffly, like she was still trying to hold the pieces together. I stood and opened my arms. For a second, she hesitated. Then she stepped into me, her body rigid at first, until it wasn't. Until her resistance shattered, and she collapsed against my chest with a sob that tore straight through me. I held her tighter, one hand cradling the back of her head as her whole body shook. She wasn't just crying now, she was unraveling, gasping like she couldn't get enough air, fingers digging into my shirt like I was the only thing keeping her from drowning. I didn't speak. Didn't tell her it would be okay. I just held her, absorbing every tremor, every ragged breath, until the storm inside her began to quiet. Hours later, curled together on the couch under a blanket, her voice was raw but steady. It started as soon as we were paired on the project. She told me everything. The way Mark had been just friendly enough at first, compliments that lingered too long, jokes that weren't quite jokes. Then, after the coffee shop, the mask slipped further. He started saying things like, "You know how much my recommendation matters for that promotion." Her hands twisted in the blanket. Or, "I'd hate for your figures to be off." A cold fury settled in my gut. She'd tried to deflect, to laugh it off like she had with others before. But Mark wasn't backing down. And now, with the promotion hanging in the balance, every message felt like a noose tightening. "I didn't tell you because," her voice cracked. "Because I know what you'd do. And I can't lose you to some jail cell over him." I cupped her face, thumb brushing away a fresh tear. "You won't." But the rage in my chest had a direction now. A name. And one way or another, Mark was going to learn what happened when he pushed too far. The reckoning. Sarah finally fell asleep in my arms, her breathing slow and uneven, exhaustion winning out over fear. But I didn't sleep. I planned. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, I knew exactly how this would go. I kissed Sarah's forehead, gently waking her. "Baby, you've got that meeting today," I reminded her, keeping my voice steady. "You don't want to be late." She tensed at the mention of it. Mark's last-minute, finalization, meeting, scheduled at some boutique office space downtown instead of the corporate building. Convenient. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "You can," I said, squeezing her hand. "And I'll be right there with you." She nodded, too drained to argue, and dragged herself to the shower. The second the water turned on, I grabbed my phone. 3 calls. 3 of my most trusted guys, men who'd worked with me for years, who knew when to ask questions and when to just move. "I need a favor," I said. By the time Sarah was dressed, my crew was already in place. Cameras hidden in the meeting room's smoke detectors. 2 of my guys posing as maintenance staff outside the door. Another in the lobby, ready to record audio if things went south. We weren't breaking laws. Just bending them. And if Mark stepped out of line, even once, we'd have proof. Sarah was silent on the drive over, fingers knotted in her lap. I reached over, lacing mine through hers. "Listen to me," I said. "You go in there like you own the room. You give your presentation. And if he so much as looks at you wrong, you walk out. No explanations. No apologies." She swallowed hard. "And if he won't." My grip tightened. "Because I'll be right outside. And so will half my crew." Her eyes flicked to mine, wide with realization. "Jake. I'm not letting this slide." She took a shaky breath, then nodded. We pulled up to the building. My guys were already inside, blending in, watching. Waiting. Sarah squared her shoulders and stepped out of the truck. Mark had no idea what was coming. But if he was smart, he'd feel it, the shift in the air. The weight of a reckoning. Because today, he was going to learn what happened when you pushed too hard. And Sarah was going to walk out of there with her dignity, and her promotion, intact. The trap springs. Jake watched the live feed from the van outside, his knuckles white around the phone screen. The camera angle was tight, but clear. Mark lounged on the couch like a predator who'd already won, his smirk oozing arrogance. Sarah sat rigidly at the far end, her professional mask flawless. But Jake knew her tells, the slight tremor in her fingers as she smoothed her skirt, the way her throat moved when she swallowed hard. Mark leaned forward, pouring 2 glasses of water from the carafe on the table. His voice was a purr. "You look tense. We've got time, why don't you relax a little?" Sarah took the glass but didn't drink. "I'd rather stay focused. The presentation's in 2 hours. Mark chuckled, swirling his water like it was whiskey. "See, that's the thing about presentations. They're only as good as the prep work." His gaze dragged over her. "And I think you've been skimping on yours." Sarah's spine straightened. "The numbers are solid. The client will see that." "Will they?" Mark set his glass down and slid closer. "Because here's the thing, Sarah, I can make those numbers sing, or I can make them sound like a funeral dirge." His hand brushed her knee. "Depends on how convincing you are." Sarah recoiled, but Mark just grinned. Then his voice dropped, all pretense gone. "Let's stop playing. You're not getting that promotion unless I say so. And I won't say so unless you earn it." He gestured to the couch. "Right here. Right now." Sarah stood abruptly. "This is harassment." Mark laughed. "And who's going to believe you? You think HR will take your word over mine? I've got tenure, Sarah. You've got nothing." Jake's blood roared in his ears. He signaled to his crew, "Move in," but then Sarah did something unexpected. She smiled. "Actually," she said, pulling out her phone, "I've got this." She tapped the screen. A recording played, Mark's own voice, slick with threats. Mark's face drained of color. "You." The door burst open. Jake filled the doorway, flanked by two of his crew, both built like brick walls, arms crossed. Mark scrambled to his feet. "What the hell is this?" Jake stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "This is you learning a lesson." He nodded to the camera hidden in the smoke detector. "That's recording." Her phone recorded. "And my guys outside? They heard everything." Mark's bravado cracked. You can't." "Here's what's going to happen," Jake said, his voice deadly calm. "You're going to give Sarah the glowing recommendation she deserves. You're going to stay the hell away from her. And if you ever pull this shit again..." He leaned in. "We send this video to HR. Your wife. The news." Mark's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sarah stepped forward, shoulders back, chin high. "And you're going to leave. Now. I'll handle the presentation alone." Mark fled like a kicked dog. The second the door closed, Sarah sagged, but Jake caught her. Held her. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. She clung to him, shaking, not with fear this time, but relief. And when she walked into that presentation 2 hours later, she crushed it. No more victims. 2 months had passed since Sarah's promotion, 2 months of her coming home with genuine smiles, of laughter returning to their evenings, of the weight finally lifting from her shoulders. Jake had kept his word. Mark's video stayed locked away, a silent threat ensuring he never so much as glanced in Sarah's direction again. But the peace shattered the moment she walked through the door that night. Jake didn't need to ask. He saw it in the way her fingers clenched around her keys, in the tight line of her jaw. She dropped her bag and sat beside him on the couch before he could even stand. "Mark's at it again," she said, voice low. Jake went still. Sarah exhaled sharply. "I was in the restroom. Heard one of the new associates, Emily, I think her name is, talking to him on the phone. She sounded scared, Jake. He's got her meeting him outside work." Jake's hands curled into fists. "She agree?" "Not willingly. I could hear it in her voice, she was trapped. When I came out of the stall, she bolted. I stopped her at the door, tried to talk to her, but she just shook her head and left." Sarah's eyes burned with fury. "He thinks he's untouchable. That no one will believe her if she speaks up." Jake stood, already reaching for his phone. Guess he forgot the terms of his probation. Sarah's brow arched. "Probation?" A dark grin cut across Jake's face. Oh, he didn't know it was a thing either. But it is now. He hit a contact labeled "Crew." 2 rings, then a gruff, "Yeah, boss?" "Mount up," Jake said. Round 2. The bar was dim, the kind of place where corporate types thought they were invisible. Mark sat in a corner booth, smirking as Emily fidgeted across from him, her drink untouched. Then the door opened. Jake walked in first, Sarah beside him, his crew fanning out behind them like a wall of silent fury. Mark's face went slack. Emily looked up, and froze. Sarah stepped forward, her voice calm but steel-edged. Emily? You don't have to stay. The girl's eyes widened. I don't? No, Jake said, not looking away from Mark. But he does. Mark found his voice. This is harassment. I'll call the police. Jake pulled out his phone, the video of Mark's threats to Sarah queued up. Go ahead. Let's all have a chat. Mark paled. Sarah took Emily's arm, guiding her away from the booth. Come on. Let's get you home. Jake leaned down, planting both hands on the table. You remember our deal, Mark? You broke it. I didn't, she came willingly. Save it. Jake straightened, nodding to his crew. Boys? Escort him out. We're taking a drive. Mark's protests were cut short as two of Jake's men hauled him up, their grips vice-tight. The next morning, Mark resigned from the company. No explanation. No fuss. But the rumor mill churned, whispers of a confidential HR report and a legal settlement that left Mark scrambling to leave the state. Emily transferred to Sarah's team. And Jake? He slept just fine. Because some men only learn the hard way. And Mark had just gotten his final lesson. This concludes our story. If you enjoyed this content, please consider hitting the subscribe button, like the video, and leave a comment below.